right, so at this point in your journey, you've seen what it looks like if there's one cell of atmospheric circulation, right? If the winds were to go completely from the poles all the way down to the equator. However, you've seen from the diagram that that's not how that works. And that's because of this thing we call the Coriolis Effect. Now, what is the Coriolis Effect? Again, I want to focus on the fact that there's the word effect, right? It's not a force. Many people might call it a force. You've heard of Coriolis force. But a force requires an interaction, like a push or a pull. And in this case, really none of those are going on. Now, before we jump into math, because only people like me really love the math, let's focus on the intuition. I want you to take a moment and follow this example that we're going to go through. Imagine that you want to send a package to a friend of yours. But as you're doing that, you're moving along, you're walking. Think about how the trajectory, meaning the movement, the path of that package may appear different to you because of how you're doing it. Okay? So now let's get a little bit of numbers in here. Maybe it'll make a little bit more sense. Now, here's you, and here's the pretty girl that you want to send the package to. You and the pretty girl are standing at different parts on the globe. At this point where you're standing, it's 24,000 miles. And for the pretty girl who's standing up here, it's 12,000 miles, or half the distance. Now, we know that velocity, or the rate at which you're moving, is the displacement, or similar to the distance that you're traveling, over the time that it takes you to do it. Now in this case, you're traveling 24,000 miles over, let's say, 1 hour, right? And let's say during that same period of time, that pretty girl traveled half the distance, so she has half of the velocity, or the speed, which makes sense, right? If you were having to work much harder in that same period of time, if you were to stop that stopwatch, you would have traveled farther because you were moving faster. Take a moment to let that sink in. Now that you've got that, let's go back to that image again of you moving within that hour. Let's say after that hour's passed, you're here, and now you're here. Now within that same amount of time, okay, maybe she walks a little farther than that. But the important thing is she doesn't walk as far as you, because she's moving slower within that same period of time. Now, after that happens, and you want to send this package, whatever it might be, a love note, or some food, or some, whatever it might be. When you want to send that package, yes, it's moving up, but you're also moving this way. So if it's moving this way, and this way, then it's really moving this way in your frame of reference. So if it's moving this way, then you can imagine how that's going to change over time. And as it changes, it's really going to look a little bit like this, and a little bit like this, for example. So we can apply the same concept to anywhere around the world. Sorry, not the most perfect circle, but think about it conceptually. Let's say this is the equator. Sorry, this might be a little hard to see. Then anytime anything's moving up in the northern hemisphere, it's going to go to the right. It's going to get deflected. But if it's moving in the southern hemisphere, it's going to go to the left, the opposite direction. And I challenge you, if you have the time, to take the opportunity to see that left calculation and how that works. So now that we've taken the opportunity to think about it quickly, intuitively, and we've done the mathematics to prove it, go back and think about it intuitively. That initial trajectory, that path that you thought of, is that consistent with what your mathematics tell you? If yes, then you did it right. If not, you better start practicing your package throwing. Good luck, and enjoy the rest of your quest.